Be intentional. Take action now. Welcome to the Humanscape podcast, where we help business leaders develop the cultural landscape for tomorrow's success. In a world that is wobbly, we're here to help you create a strong cultural foundation for your business. And it's all about bringing your values to life, elevating people to perform at their best, creating a strong strategic plan, and offering lifelong learning opportunities. Are you ready to bring work to life and life to work? We are. Let's talk. We're back with another episode of the Humanscape podcast from HumanWorks 8. I'm Shawn Golias, the thought catalyst with HumanWorks 8, and I'm co-hosting with Sarah Marshall from our team. Today, we are talking with Amber Van Allen, the wellness administrator at the City of Green Bay. Today, we're diving into what's really hitting home with employees, from the ways they connect and build resiliency to how organizations are addressing burnout. We'll also explore how to track the impact of these efforts and hear the innovative programs behind it all, like Green Bay's Health 1265 program and their work with another Humanscape guest, Motion Connected. Whether you're leading a team or just curious about what keeps employees engaged and thriving, this episode is packed with real-life examples of ways to bring work to life and life to work. But first, let's hear a little bit more about Amber, Sarah.
Amber is a dedicated wellness administrator with nearly 20 years of experience in the health and wellness field. She brings a strong foundation in evidence-based practices to the planning, implementation, and management of wellness programs. Amber has overseen wellness initiatives that enhance employee engagement, support preventive health, and promote long-term lifestyle improvements. Skilled in program development and team leadership, she excels at creating sustainable solutions that foster healthier, more productive environments.
To kick things off, we like to get a sense of our guests, how they think, operate, and feel. One of the ways we do that is through a philosophy and framework we call the 3 parts of the mind. So Amber, let's get into your mind here a little bit. Let's start with that cognitive part of your mind. What's something you're smart about, Amber, that people wouldn't have an idea?
I think probably more just my relationship building. I think that's something that just comes supernatural to me. So it works really well being a wellness administrator and, dealing with people and trust and those types of things on a daily basis. It comes natural.
So you like to get out there and build relationships that way. I bet they see that. I bet that's not a secret. But
I suppose that's true.
I like that, though.
And Amber, a question about the affective part of the mind. So something about you, how you feel, your personality. I want to know, what's your favorite well-being practice that you have, just you personally?
I think just having empathy for people. I think being in a wellness field, you get to know people on a personal level really quick. You're talking about, their lifestyle and different things that they do and their relationships and all of that stuff. And so I think it gets personal quick. So building that trust, having empathy towards them. I think we all can relate to times where we've tried to, do some self-improvement of some sort, and feeling like you have someone that's got your back and is in it with you goes a long way, I feel like.
And you use the word empathy. That word, I think sometimes our listeners go like, empathy. Yeah. What does empathy really mean to you, Amber?
Yeah, I think it's more than, just a word. It's a feeling, right? I think having empathy and being able to relate to people, I think, kind of go hand in hand. If they think that you're here and you know it all and you do it all perfect and things like that, I don't know if people are willing to trust you as much as if you have that empathy and you can relate to them and they don't feel like they're being judged when they have conversations with you. And, it's a good way to help people be accountable to themselves and to you. But if you have that empathy piece to it, they're not feeling like, oh no, they have that trust with you. And if they mess up, they can tell you that they did. And where do I go from here type of thing.
I love it. It's almost like getting on the same wavelength, or, it's sort of like being present with each other that way. I like that, Amber. And the third part of the mind, I know you recently spoke with Sarah about your Colby result, this cognitive instinct. So my question there, Amber, is if you have the freedom to take action your way, how does Amber get started? Where do you jump in naturally and work?
I think I'm a natural planner. organizer, try to avoid chaos, I guess you could say, as much as possible and plan things out. That doesn't mean I can't, go on the fly with things. But if it was my way, like you mentioned, I would have the pieces in place and a schedule and have it organized and charts, graphs, visual stuff, all of those types of things. I think that's the biggest way that I would operate successfully, I guess you could say, and kind of naturally too.
One thing when we're working with leaders across organizations and they look at the teams, we always say, hey, there's a lot of different ways. And I don't think people, sometimes have the confidence to say, I need this. This works best for me. And that's one thing about that assessment. It really helps people give them the confidence to say, hey, if I can do it my way, I can get to that result, but let me start here because I'm going to get in the flow quicker and add greatest results quicker. So I'm glad you said my way. Hold on to that. Speak up on your way. All right, Amber?
Yeah, and I think that Colby assessment was really neat. I mean, to me, it felt like it was spot on with, how I operate and things like that. But just to kind of have that validity, I guess you could say, with the science behind it that matches what you actually think was pretty cool.
I'm glad you had a good response. And, many of our clients that use that assessment say the same thing. It's like, wow, it's like it just verified what I know. But then it also gave me a little bit of a different place to be able to talk about it, really strongly and well.
And some confidence, right? Give me some confidence in how I talk about myself. That was a fun conversation, Amber. So thanks for taking time to chat about that. Now that we have a glimpse into a little bit of who you are, I want to talk about something that's making a real impact for employees in Green Bay and jump right in. So when you and I recently spoke about Colby, I had mentioned how the Colby tool is foundational work in all of those 8 people touch points in an organization. We got talking about those touch points and you called out your impact and influence in strategic planning, teamwork, communication, belonging. And then I added in performance and leadership development. And I'll let you steer where we go here, but I'd love for you to give listeners a rundown of how your role impacts some of those people touch points.
Yeah, I think how I mentioned, at the start of this conversation is, just the building relationships, right? For me, that's a lot of what all of this comes down to is building that trust with employees, making them feel valued, hearing their opinions and their thoughts, and not just, shrug any of that off, right? It doesn't mean that you always have to take action when employees talk to you about ideas and things like that, but they want to be heard. They want someone to talk to about different things that they're thinking. And so I think that communication part, building the trust, specifically for me in a wellness role is huge. I mean, and that's kind of where I started, when I came here to the city. I mean, I've been in the wellness field for a while, but that was kind of where I started is, meeting with the leaders, meeting with the supervisors, those types of individuals and just talking to them about what works best for them. I mean, here at the city of Green Bay, we're all within the city of Green Bay, but we're split up, right? We have locations like City Hall and Public Works and Parks Department, police, fire, the list goes on, right? We've got a lot of different locations. So, although we are all relatively close to each other, we're not all in the same building and we don't all do the same roles. So I think it's important, in my role to build those relationships at all of those locations with all of those different employees and not just maybe the ones that I work with here in City Hall, but everyone outside of that as well. So, for me, I think reading through some of the 8 touch points that we talked about, communication is definitely one of them. And then the belonging part, I felt like those 2 spoke to me right away. And then in our conversation, you definitely showed me that, oh yeah, maybe there is some other ones of those that I guess I do as well.
Yeah, well-being really touches a lot of different areas of an organization. And one of the biggest initiatives that you're leading, Amber, is the Health 1265, which Shawn called out earlier. We're excited to hear more about that. So to start us off, can you just walk us through what Health 1265 is, how it works, and what makes it unique?
Yeah, so Health 1265 is our well-being program here at the city of Green Bay. We named it Health 1265 because 1265 Lombardi Avenue is the address of Lambeau Field, which is the home of the Green Bay Packers. So being as we work in the city of Green Bay and we are employees as the city of Green Bay, definitely very fitting that we tie the Packers into, our wellness program. So we do work with Motion Connected and we utilize their platform. So we interchangeably, I guess you could say, use Motion Connected and Health 1265 because Health 1265 is Motion Connected for us and Motion Connected is Health 1265. It's, our program is called that, but we do everything with our wellness program through their platform. So we have a variety of, I guess you could say, activities. So we break it down into 4 different categories that employees can earn points for. So it's activity, awareness, healthy choices, and prevention. And then employees aim to get 1,265 points, and then they get a lower insurance premium that they pay. And then we have other incentives built in there as well. So it's not always just about that. If you get to another level, you get an Amazon gift card, a higher level drawings. And then last year, we started doing quarterly incentives throughout the year as well to kind of encourage employees to, maybe check their scorecard, as we call it, throughout the year more and not just, oh, at the end, do I have everything in I need to? Want them to really try and increase that engagement throughout the year and not, maybe just in the beginning or at the end or when certain things come up.
I hope our listeners caught that you have more than one use of 1265, or that comes into play in more than one way. It's not just the address and the name of the program, but it's sort of that goal, what the points that team members are trying to hit. I love the numbers. When we create programs, just having a number attached to it is always really fun. We have Wellbeing 365, which is, of course, not an address, but a number of days in the year. And that to us is just, how are you informing something around wellness or activating some sort of wellness activity every single day of the year? So I see the 1265, 365, all the numbers. I really like it.
And they're easy to remember.
Exactly. You got it, Amber.
You mentioned employees, and we work with a number of different cities, so we're familiar with your setup since we work with the city of Sun Prairie, city of Oak Creek, and different things that way. With that number and then different departments, how do you encourage participation, or how do you keep momentum going or connection to 1265?
Yeah, I think it's important, how I mentioned we have different locations throughout the city. So I am at several locations on a weekly basis or a biweekly basis or, some a little bit more spaced out than that. But I think having not only them see my name in an email, but like know my face consistently and just being present like that for them. I think me going to them and meeting them, not where they're at, but where they're at for their work location, quite simply is that really means a lot to them. That way I can have that face-to-face interaction with them, again, continuing to build that trust and those relationships up. So when they have questions about, wellness things, even benefits to a certain degree, any of that kind of stuff, I'm there as that resource for them. And I mean, you never really know what thing you may help someone with or guide them through is really going to make that change for them. Whether it's a program, it's a presentation, it's a challenge, you have no idea what's going to do it. So it's always fun to, try and find a variety of ways to keep employees engaged. And I think that's the important way to do it is, listen to feedback they provide to you, ideas they share with you, and then have it changing to some degree so that, like I said, you don't know what program or what thing might really click for someone. And that could be the start to something big for them.
I think it's cool, Amber, that you are a person that people can talk to, can trust. When they see you coming into whatever space they're in, they connect you with the well-being efforts at the city of Green Bay. And it's not just that you're hiding behind any emails that are getting pushed out or any initiatives. It's a real person. And I think that makes all the difference. So I just wanted to call that out.
Doesn't surprise me from when you started with relationships, and it's all about connection. And I think you see added value in that your teams, when they see you, it just helps build that connection then right away. And all the things that you're offering when it comes to well-being, it's easy to focus on that during times where it's just celebration and fun. But is there anything you do with 1265 that helps team members during busier times at Green Bay or more stressful interactions in the city of Green Bay?
Yeah, actually, this December, so in a few weeks here, we're going to be having a presentation on burnout. So we have Amplify Health by Bellin. We have someone from there coming to our location, a couple locations actually for the same presentation in person, and then we do a recording of that. So I think when we talked about bringing a presentation regarding burnout and that topic here to the city, we contemplated, okay, time of year, like, do we avoid the holidays? Do we not? And I said, we have a couple other programs going on typically this time of year. So sometimes I avoid adding one more to it, but I thought this year maybe that would be a great time to talk about something like that because, with the holidays and all the other stuff that goes on with it, people get exhausted, and what better time to have, a resource and maybe some learning tools that employees can gather from this presentation. So that's something I'm really looking forward to.
That whole balance of look is something, I think is so individualized by person, what balance they need. So I think looking at burnout, that's one thing. We always find burnout can also, I'll take it back to the 3 parts of the mind. If you had to work not in your way 8 hours a day, that could lead to burnout. And I bet you feel that too. If I have to work against my grain or my natural ways of working, that can be sort of stressful and burnout. Do you find yourself when you're forced to do it in that chaotic environment, that could be a little more burnout than if you get to plan and do your work ahead of time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's exhausting, right? On many more levels than just one, being in those type of atmospheres like that. So the more times you can, avoid that and really be in your lane and when you work well and when you work the best, all the better for that. I would say another thing that we did was a staying connected one. So, May Mental Health Awareness Month, we did a staying connected challenge, which I thought was really neat with our employees. So talking about just, I guess maybe stressful times. So May wasn't maybe necessarily a stressful time, but I think it was a great time to bring attention to, mental health awareness and share resources and those types of things. So we tied that into our program this last year and we did a staying connected challenge. So it was 4 weeks and there were 4 different ways to try to stay connected. So the first one was self-connection. Then we did a week of family connection, friend connection, and community connection. So kind of just a little description each week on what those were. And then I gave a task to employees to do. So of course they just had to log those tasks and complete them. But it was really fun. I'm just seeing some of the feedback on, most specifically, I think the community connection, a lot of like people doing random good deeds of service and, paying for something in a drive-through for the people behind them or just things like that. So it was really just neat to hear feedback on how much that individual got from doing some of those types of things out in their community.
Well, and Amber, speaking of tracking, you mentioned Motion Connected is a big part of your well-being strategy. Listeners might even remember our conversation with Sarah Troop on how technology can help us track and encourage participation. So looking at it through that lens, what kind of data or KPIs do you watch most closely to understand how the program is working at the City of Green Bay?
We really have focused probably more than other years this year on, those KPIs and kind of what we're working towards. And so, at the city, we have kind of like a vision and a mission, and then we have key strategies. So I'm part of human resources. So of course, we also have strategies and KPIs in there about turnover and time to fill and those types of things. And my focus within that is really like the well-being program and kind of measuring what our engagement rate is, how many employees are participating in it, not just signed up for an account, but actively participating, right? Like doing something other than, hey, I signed up and that's all I did. We want them engaged actively with that. So Motion Connected really, with the reporting and all of that stuff that we can grab from there, that really helps us see, on a live feed, essentially, how many active accounts we have, where are people at for points, like where's the average points and things like that. So it makes it a lot easier, come quarterly when I'm running reports for incentives to see who's eligible for different things, who earn their premium reduction for their health insurance at the end of the year. It really is nice to have that capability within Motion Connected to pull those numbers and reports. It was kind of cool. We, typically usually track how many people reach 1265 because I think for a lot, that's the goal, right? That's probably the bigger incentive when you can save a lot of money on your health insurance premium by meeting those goals. So we just finished our scorecard the end of October. So we had 70% of employees that reached the 1265. And, fortunately, we've stayed right around 68% for a couple years, which I think is awesome. We have just over 700 eligible employees. We have about 900, just over 900 total, but we have about a couple hundred less that are eligible to do Health 1265. And so we kind of try to track to like how many of those that are eligible are participating. And, we're at 67% most recently with that, which I think is a really great number of those engaged in the program and participating in it. So we kind of like to track those numbers and, Motion Connected helps a ton with that as far as the capability that they give us on the administration side to kind of run those numbers and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, those are some of the KPIs, I guess you could say, that we track is the engagement, how many are actively participating. This year, we've really been tracking new hires. So who's new to the City of Green Bay, and then what percentage of those are signing up for Health 1265 accounts. So as of earlier this month, we have 81%. So I feel like that's a great number to have of those who are new employees this year, that 81% of them, are signed up for Health 1265. There's a lot of reporting that we can get out of that and a lot of great stuff.
You heard us talk about the cognitive part of the mind in today's 3 parts of the mind segment earlier in this episode. The only way to measure the cognitive part of one's mind is by taking the Kolbe A index. The Kolbe A isn't about personality or intelligence. It's about you in the zone, you adding your best value, you at your most creative, how you get things done when you're free to be yourself. At HumanWorks 8, we use the Kolbe A as the foundation to our talent optimization work with clients to help individuals and teams get the right people in the right role, build confidence, strengthen relationships, and improve performance. Want to know your unique result? Take the Kolbe A index and uncover how your mind naturally works for your best performance. Visit humanworks8.com/Kolbe, Kolbe, to learn more.
I feel like those are something to celebrate. Just the 67% participation, the 70% of employees reaching that 1265 goal, and the new hire participation over 80%. I think those are really worth celebrating. Is there something that you do, Amber, to communicate those awesome metrics or the growth that you're seeing year over year?
I think a lot of it is at our senior staff level, that they share a lot of those types of KPIs with them and kind of updates and that type of stuff. On my side to things, what I do is, probably once a month or every other month, I'll take a look at like what we're doing for maybe like a challenge or things like that. And I will randomly reach out to people who, are maybe doing something like really well within the challenge. This last year, it was kind of neat. I kind of was watching like who had the most points overall on our scorecard, because everyone can't see each other's scorecards, right? They only see their own, so they only know what they have for points. So I surprised the person who was the top point getter, with like a little gift card, and reach out to people throughout the year and be like, hey, did you know that you're leading the whole city in this challenge? And, you have this many lifetime miles since the program started, and just different data points like that. I think was really neat to hear people's feedback. Once I reached out to them, they're like, I had no idea. That's pretty cool.
So I wasn't going to go here, Amber, but now I'm just curious. With all that success, what are the barriers? Let's say that other 20, it's really strong. Is there a barrier you find why somebody won't even try or get in there to get points? Is there anything you hear that is that barrier you're still trying to overcome? Or is it an interest barrier? Is it anything that comes to mind that our listeners should be aware of?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I hear is people assuming that it's overwhelming. Like, I don't have time. That seems like a lot of work, where, of course, coming from me, they're going to, when I say it's really not. Like, we make it achievable. It's something we want people to engage in. I take that with a grain of salt, because they would expect me to say that, I am running the program. They would expect me to talk that way about it. But I think that what really comes into play then is, so I have a wellness committee. So we have wellness champions at almost every location we have representation from. And it's really neat to see those wellness champions, when they have a new employee, like almost immediately engage with them about Health 1265, right? They're talking about it. They're like, hey, you got to meet Amber. She's at our shop on this day. She does the wellness program. She'll tell you all about it, so it's really cool to like hear new employees be like, oh yeah, so-and-so told me, and I know that they're our wellness champion. It's not always even the wellness champions. It's just employees out at different locations supporting that. So back to your question, I guess, about what barriers, I think it's just the overwhelming. People maybe not necessarily taking the time or wanting to take the time to really, sit down and kind of just take a look at what is all offered within the program. I do offer, to meet with employees and walk through the scorecard, and that's part of my routine when they sign up for a program or sign up for Health 1265 is, welcoming them to the program and extending that olive branch, I guess you could say. And if you want to meet with me and go through the program, please do so. I've had, new employees who come in with 6 to 8 weeks left of our whole scorecard year, and they're super motivated. Hey, can you meet with me? Let me see. Can I get to 1265 in 6 weeks? I said, well, I don't know. Let's meet and we'll figure it out. And I've had more than a few achieve that. So it depends on their motivation. But from what I hear, I think the biggest barrier is just maybe it feeling like it's overwhelming. We have an app, right? Motion Connected has an app, which makes it convenient, but also that could be another barrier for some people who aren't super tech savvy, and they're like, ugh, just another app, another this, another that type of thing. So, just extending that invitation, I guess you could say, that I'm here to help. Like, if you have questions on stuff, just ask. I can help you link a device. I can help you upload things and stuff like that. If it's not the easiest for you, what can I do to help type of thing?
You mentioned a couple topics that you've already covered. Have there been any other topics that you might, just put a little bit of an idea in listeners to this has really had great impact, or this really brought a lot of engagement, or this topic was helpful? Any other topics come to mind over your history that you thought that others should really consider offering or bringing in some expertise or bringing a focus to in their workday?
This last February, we had a sheriff come in and he talked about resiliency. I heard a ton of good feedback after that. He was super engaging. Employees felt like they learned quite a bit from it. They want him to come back and talk about something else if he can. So I think just talking to resiliency, and one of the big things he said in there is there's something good in every day. Some days you just got to work a little harder to figure out what that good thing is. There's good in every day. And that's, I think, a big thing about being resilient is trying to have that positive mindset. And I think, having him here and talk about that maybe that resonated differently with some people, and they really took that in versus hearing it from someone else. So we got a lot of good feedback on that. And I think there's certain topics within the wellness field that are worth repeating. Every few years, there's good reminders. I've been here at the city for just over 8 years, and we've done, a hydration challenge twice already. And I can't tell you, every time we do it, there's people who are like, well, here's my log on how much water I drink. 0. Like, I can hand it to you right away. I know I need to drink more water, right? There's just different topics that people are always curious to learn more about. And sometimes they need to be repeated, tweaked a little bit, but I think they're worth repeating.
Amber, seeing the impact on employees is really rewarding. And I'm glad you highlighted a couple of sessions that you thought really had that impact. And it really, though, highlights another important piece, and that is leadership, getting leaders involved and leaders as role models that way. What role have your leaders in the city of Green Bay, your people leaders, had in helping 1265 be a success?
Yeah, I mean, here I think with, within any organization, right, it starts at the top. Whoever is, leading that organization, like, do they believe in wellness? Do they believe in the impact it has and the importance that it is for employees? And thankfully, our mayor here has been awesome, super supportive of well-being, as well as our HR director. So, when you have the support of those individuals, right, then that trickles down to your supervisors. And then when employees can see their supervisors not only supporting it, but actually like living it and doing it and participating, I think that really goes a long way. For years we do this Move with the Mayor walk. So we do that in the whole month of September. So we have 5 walks throughout the city at every single location. So there's a lot of walks going on in the month of September. But the neat thing is our mayor tries to get to 1 walk at almost every location if he can, which is a really neat way for our employees to connect with him on a very casual basis, right? You're just walking on the road, sidewalk, sorry. You're not walking on the road, on the sidewalk, safety. But yeah, it's a great thing where employees can see, that matters to him. And then, we'll have supervisors who will also join the walks. If I'm not there at all the walks, because obviously I can't be at all of them throughout the month, we'll have the supervisors or directors like leading the walks at those locations. So I think that's one example of, having that leadership support and not just saying, yep, you can come here and you can have this presentation here, but hey, they're there watching it. They're there walking. They're there promoting it, I guess you could say, and believing in it just as much. I think that those actions speak way louder than words.
I have to jump in here and share something that we've done before. We call it 52-52. And Amber, in a very similar way that you're talking about getting the mayor involved, we challenge leaders, 52 different leaders every single week of the year. Each leader was assigned a week, and we said, hey, the 3rd week of January is your week. You've got to do something around well-being. You've got to lead some sort of activation around well-being. And what's it going to be? Well, we're here to support you. But they could look then at our pillars of well-being, which are purpose, balance, nutrition, and movement, and say, okay, I think I'm going to do something around, yoga, because that's how I physically stay well, and maybe even mentally too. Or, we had a leader who taught us all how to make jam, and that was just his way of, but he spent time with his family doing that, and it just sort of peeled back the curtain a little bit, and we could see a little bit more of his personality. We can get to know our leaders a little bit better if they are engaging in that almost vulnerable moment of, here's what I do for well-being. Let me share it with you. So that can be edited, of course. It's not like every single organization can have 52 leaders doing something 52 weeks out of the year. So could you just do one a month? Could you do two a month? What does that look like for your organization?
Well, I just love how your mayor is setting the standard for that in a way, because it's all about role modeling. And what we find when it comes to well-being, and maybe it would even encourage those 20 to 30% that are not participating, if they just saw somebody else share, this helps me. And sometimes it's a little thing, and people don't always think making jam is connected to well-being. It is. It is, for all the things we've talked about. It's a great insight for listeners to think about, because I think, as you said starting from the top, I think it starts with anybody that is leading other people. You need to think well about them and help them find their ways into well-being. I'm sure you would agree with that, Amber.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that idea, that you do, Sarah. I think that's awesome. It puts that decision making in those leaders, right? So they can pick something they're comfortable with, but that also then opens up the opportunity for them to be vulnerable a little bit, and people, their coworkers, who work for them or with them, right, to see them in their own element. And anytime you have, I think, that type of human connection like that, right? Because in the end, that matters so much to people, regardless if people admit that it does or not, right? That human connection and understanding that they are more than just what their title is type of thing. Like, they are human, and things like making jam or doing yoga shows people that.
It makes it easier in the long term to just strengthen that relationship when you are at work too.
Yeah, I also, when we were working with our clients on this topic, Amber, it also takes a little bit of we'll use the word pressure in quotes here, off the people leading well-being, because it has to be led by everybody. It can't just be Amber in Green Bay, it's Amber and everybody. And sometimes you just need to be very direct and kind to your leaders, saying, if we're investing and putting energy into well-being, you do too. That's who we are. That's how we live in this city. That's important to us.
Yeah, I think anytime you can make it just normal and part of what you do, the better, right? Like, then it's not a thing to do. It's just what you do, and it doesn't seem like work. It's just part of your culture and part of how everyone operates, which is really cool to have it just be normal, I guess you could say.
It's the good normal, I guess. The new normal. An organization should aim for, as far as that goes.
Amber, as we look across your work, a few key themes stand out. We talked about connection, resiliency, burnout. We look at everything you've built with Health 1265. Those themes are showing up everywhere. So, Amber, what are you most excited about? Whether that's new topics, speakers, initiative, what's going to keep building on those themes of connection, resiliency, and burnout?
Looking forward, it's just all about listening to feedback and, don't get stale in things that you do, but trying to find, whether it's a presenter on a topic that's something new or a program, it's just trying to find ways to keep employees engaged in our program. And so to me, that's the fun part, is hearing our wellness committee, or even, any employees just say, hey, have you ever thought about doing this, or bringing someone in to talk about this? I don't want to say that it's ever changing, but to some degree it is. And if you're offering the same thing year after year after year. Like, granted, there are programs and there are things that are worth offering every year. But when it comes to, challenges and just different topics and things like that, you need to offer different things for your employees. And I think that helps a ton with engagement. So I think it's just continuing to keep employees engaged and excited about the program and the offerings that we have here at the city.
I love the balance between the ever-changing and those staples that you just have to keep doing year after year or multiple times. We as humans are ever-changing, right? We're always learning and growing and having different interests. So it sounds like the City of Green Bay's well-being strategy is really closely aligned with that, and just the dynamic nature of people.
Amber, this has been a great conversation. Thanks for joining us today. But I always like to wrap up with some things that jumped out at me. I heard from you today, like, culture is relationship building. Strong cultures have strong relationship building. And you also said well-being is relationships. So then well-being is culture. So I'm just making sort of a connection back there that I heard in a lot of what you said. And I'm not sure people think of well-being as relationship building and that element of culture. So I like that we talked a lot about that. Also, we learned that that's where you're really confident. That's your sweet spot. And you can tell from this conversation, because that's another thing that jumped out at me too, is that, it's all about, part of well-being is building confidence. And we talk about what are ways to gain your own confidence. You talk about, hey, this is my way of working that you learned and reinforced through the Kolbe assessment. We would say that that helps my well-being. If I can get into my flow and my way of working, that's a strong way for me to be at my best and not be as overwhelmed that way. And then a couple of things where you said, if you're doing well-being, you need to meet people where they are at. And I heard a couple of different things in that. Now, one is you're going out there and meeting them where they're at out in the work, which is that's the physical element of that, which I love and I think is really important, because sometimes I think well-being practitioners will put something out there, but they're like, why aren't people engaging? Well, you've got to get out there and talk about it and be present. And I heard that in what you're saying. But I also think meeting people where they're at is also you're offering a variety of different opportunities. And I think that's really key, because in wellness, one size does not fit all. And I hear that. And I see you nodding as we're talking here, Amber. So that really jumps out. And I think that's a key point. And maybe it's a simple point, but a key point to our listeners that way. And then just topics, burnout and staying connected and resiliency. That variety allows people to find their moment of well-being and find their way into it. And I think that's why you've had such good growth and such good participation and engagement in your numbers, Amber. So again, I want to thank you so much for everything that you talked about. If listeners want to know more about what you're doing in Green Bay or connect, what's the best way to get to Amber in Green Bay?
Yeah, definitely. They can reach me via email. So my email is amber.vanallen@greenbaywi.gov. So amber.vanallen@greenbaywi.gov. They can definitely give me a call. My phone number, 920-448-3101. I'm here for any resources, comments, thoughts, ideas. I love being able to network and share ideas with other well-being professionals.
I love that. And I want to thank our listeners for joining in on this episode of Humanscape. Let's bring work to life and life to work. Thanks for joining us. We look forward to you joining in the conversation next time. Remember to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, and learn more at humanworks8.com/podcast. And if you want to know what I'm wondering about each week, subscribe to my Wondering Wednesday newsletter on LinkedIn. Reach out to us if you need a partner to navigate your Humanscape, or a speaker from our team who will inspire your people and challenge your leadership. It all starts in one moment. Let's bring work to life and life to work together. You got us.